Hello again. D. McClung here. This is Art-Ra-Monologs. I think I'm going to read you some short clips from my notebook. Hold on while I find the first one. Going to try to read this without getting lost. Alright, here goes. Someone was talking about prostitution should be legalized and licensed. So, here's some thoughts. Prostitution is not a licensable occupation. Licenses are for corporations, not the exercising of a natural, unalienable human right. We own our own bodies to do with it as we please, as long as we do not harm other people. That is to say, as long as we don't violate other people's rights, we are free to do as we please. We don't need the government's permission. So let me read the rest of this. It's called freedom. The government has no say in it. Somebody that I was communicating with said that a license is required to do various things. Sell insurance, to drive a car, to be a hairdresser, cosmologist, makeup, hairstyle, and to be a doctor or a lawyer. This is a myth. Key word here is required. The government cannot legally require anyone to buy a license and therefore become a corporate entity engaging in a privileged activity, especially when that activity is a natural and inalienable human right. Just because the criminal government does something doesn't make it legal or valid. The government is required not to make laws that violate human rights or fraudulently oppress the human rights of the people. Goes to show you that, the government doesn't listen to the laws that were made specifically for it. Constitution, for example, is the law that governs the government. It tells the government what it can and cannot do, and what it must and must not do. All right? I think it's a given. Unfortunately, most Americans don't get that, but that's what it was there for. It's why it was created. Like a contract, an agreement, a condition. The Constitution says you can be the government, you can govern with the consent of the people. Without the consent of the people, you're done. Finished. Go home. You're not necessary anymore. So, in regards to our natural, inalienable human rights, the government is forbidden to make laws such as laws against nudity, laws against prostitution, laws that tell us that we cannot, say, smoke marijuana those laws would be a violation of our natural human rights to smoke pot if we want to. Besides, it's a plant. It grows. It just grows. It's like a tree. It's like flowers. Nature. All right. The act of applying for, buying, acquiring a license is, in fact, applying for and becoming a corporation. That's what a license is. A corporate license. Any license is, in effect, asking permission to engage in a privileged activity, not a human right. Rights don't require a license. That would be against the law, i.e. the Constitution and the principles of freedom. The truth is, the American people are easily indoctrinated, manipulated, controlled, and conditioned to believe all sorts of lies and false notions. The belief that a license is required is one of those criminally fraudulent falsehoods that have been indoctrinated into the minds of most Americans. An example would be the false notion that a lawyer is required to have a license to practice law and give legal advice. I'm sure you've seen the disclaimers on say, websites or advertisements or whatever that state I'm not licensed to practice law. I'm not licensed to give you legal advice. That's bullshit. Bullshit. It's contradictory to the very concept of a free society. Of course you can give someone legal advice. You don't have to be a licensed lawyer or a member of the club. The American Bar Association, which is a cartel. Since when do I need the approval of a cartel to practice my profession? Whatever that profession is. The American Bar Association. You don't have to belong to the American Bar Association to be a lawyer. I could say I'm a lawyer. I am, in some sense, the word a lawyer. I use the word advocate. You can represent people in legal matters. You don't have to be a member of the American Bar. That's a myth. I very often give people legal advice, and I certainly am not an officer of the court. Wouldn't be an officer of the court. I would really not want to be an officer of the court, which is what attorneys that work for the court, controlled by the court, that's what they are. Police officers are officers of the court. That means they serve at the whim and pleasure of the court or a judge. All right. Let's move on. The truth is, the American people are easily indoctrinated, manipulated, controlled, and conditioned to believe all sorts of lies and false notions. I've repeated that because that's important. The belief that a license is required is one of those criminally fraudulent falsehoods that have been indoctrinated into the minds of most Americans. I repeat that again, for emphasis. I am living proof that you don't need a license, that you are not required to have a license or be a member of the club, the monopoly, the cartel called the American Bar Association. And this holds true for the medical profession. Doctor. You don't have to be a member of the American Medical Association to be a doctor. How many students graduate from college, get a piece of paper that is recorded, stating that they have completed the required courses and training to be a lawyer or a doctor. That's not a license. That's simply a certificate stating the fact that you have earned the right to call yourself a doctor or a lawyer. See, being a lawyer is the result of your education and your qualifications as stated by your educational facility, stating you have acquired the knowledge, the skills, the training to be a lawyer. So if you have a college degree that states you're a lawyer, according to the institution you graduated from, you are, in fact, a lawyer. And you haven't even considered joining the American Bar Association. Association. Understand the word association. If you don't know what the word association means, you should look it up. It doesn't mean governmental department. That's the trouble in America. People don't know what words mean. They have been brain boggled by the powers that be and conditioned, manipulated, indoctrinated. But nonsense. You don't need a license to be anything. I mean, if you're a prostitute, for example, it says this whole thing started out as a result of an article about prostitution. It's your body. Free society. If you want to have sex with someone in exchange for some monetary reward, exchange, an even exchange, I'll let you fuck me in exchange for you giving me something you have. Like, well, not an STD, hopefully. But, you know, money, which is your property, which you have every right to have and acquire and dispose of in any way you feel you want. That's called freedom. Americans don't understand the concept of freedom as a general rule, which is sad. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. Well, it is if you're just not mentally capable of understanding it and knowing what it is. If you're too lazy to look it up, do a little research to find out what the law actually says. Unfortunate. So, that's a given. Prostitution. It's called a profession in some cases, but for example, you don't need a corporate license to sell insurance, assuming you're selling insurance for a non-incorporated insurance company. Most insurance companies are incorporated, I imagine. But a corporate license of the corporation that sells insurance hires salesmen, sales personnel to sell the insurance that company offers. A salesman doesn't have to be a corporation to do that. Now, the fact is, people are befuddled, confused. You don't need a license to engage in a human right. This is ingrained in the very principles of freedom, and it is ingrained in the core being of America and a free society. If I need permission to do it, then it's not a right. If you buy a license, if you ask permission from the state, and the state grants you permission to do something, then it is granted you permission to engage in a privilege, not a human right. Driving a car is, of course, a right, and no license is required. However, the criminal state has the power to violate your human rights in spite of the fact that it is illegal for the state to do so. I can only battle so many evils. One has to choose one's battles. Up until recently, considering the Real ID laws, which are illegal, I think they're still trying to push that one, Real ID Act, a blatantly illegal violation of human rights of Americans living in this supposedly, allegedly free country. It was no big deal to acquire a driver's license in not too distant past. You got one. You look forward to it when you were a teenager. Oh, I'm 16, I can get a license to drive, yay! And, you know, that was a big deal. You wanted to go down and get your license, get your training permit, and you know, get some experience and training on how to drive a car. I'll point out that people who drive tractor trailers, like my brother, he's retired now, but he had to get a CDL, commercial vehicle driver license. I won't get into that. He did so proudly, and drove his truck, or the truck that the company, the truck that he worked for. He was a good driver. I believe he was exceptional, and he has every reason to be proud of his career and his occupation. However, we're talking about the average non-professional driver's requirement in regards to getting a driver's license. Like I said, it was no big deal before it became a matter of, let's see your papers. A very bad situation, I hope, seriously, that it doesn't come a American universally held practice. But like I said, you have to choose your battles, and driver's license basically doesn't really infringe upon my rights a whole lot. I get the little card, I pay the 10 or 12 bucks, whatever it is, go about my business. By comparison to the serious violations of our freedom, our rights, driver's license, by comparison, is a trivial concern. It's a major concern if they want to make it into an identification card, a national identification card. But I'm not speaking of that at this moment. So, getting a driver's license, and everybody knows or understands, or should understand, that the American police state certainly pushes for us to have a driver's license. Photo ID, you have to have that darn thing just about everywhere. To get into a hospital, to get into a federal building, and so forth. Sometimes just everyday normal behavior, like buying alcohol, buying cigarettes. in comparison to the larger issues, it's not really one would have to, wouldn't want to spend a whole lot of time and energy on that one, seeing as how it's minor by comparison to, say, the TSA at the airports, or the NSA spying on us, and other blatant violations of our freedom. The Nazi police state, terrorists, that are murdering Americans in the streets of America, often in broad daylight, on camera sometimes, and getting away with it, are of greater concern than the violation of our right to drive a car. The right to travel is a bigger issue in that same vein. The TSA is, of course, interfering with our right to travel freely. The TSA and the NSA and the FBI and so on, much more important to focus on. So driver's license is minor problem. And someone said, Facebook I believe it was, that I should advertise and go out and find clients as a lawyer if I don't need a license. The problem with that is, why should I advertise? I'm not looking for business or clients, and I have no desire to plead cases in a court of law or represent clients or defendants before an establishment judge or a corrupt legal system. That's not to say that I can't, or that there is some sort of restriction against it. Americans have been duped into believing that only members of the American bar are allowed to practice law, give legal advice, because they keep telling you that. The cartel, lawyers of the cartel, the head of the cartel, the lawyers elitist club, keep putting that myth into our heads. You're not allowed to give legal advice. You're not allowed to practice law. You're practicing law without a license. You're giving legal advice without a license. That, of course, is bullshit. Because they don't need one. Let's say you had some sort of legal question and you came to me. Let's say something about marriage. Let's say you were concerned about marriage in today's America, and you're saying, what should I do? I've got a question about this. I don't believe in getting a marriage license, getting a state's permission to get married. That's a natural right. I have a right to be married or not married. I don't need the government's permission to marry someone. It's a natural human right. So what should I do, Mr. Unlicensed Lawyer? And I would advise them. I would say, don't get one. Because the state marriage program is just that, a program. Program like food stamps, welfare. Program. Don't join the program. If you join the program, then you're pretty much obligated to obey the laws and regulations of that program, that privilege. If the state says, we've made this law, this marriage law, which is not really marriage at all, it's just simply a matter of becoming a corporation. You and your intended, your spouse, are simply asking for permission to become a member of the government program. It's nothing to do with marriage, except that they call it marriage, but it's not. It's simply asking for permission to become a corporate entity and thus exercise the privilege of being married, whatever the government defines that as, which used to be, something like a contract between one man and one woman. That's the conditions of being a member of the program, but there's no law requiring you to be a member of the program. You don't have to get permission from the government to engage in a rite, which marriage is. And they pretty much brainwashed the whole population of America in about 3 generations to think that, oh, I got to have a license for my marriage to be legal, which is total bullshit. It's just simply not true. You might have to get a license if you want to become a member of the program and, be incorporated. Because privileges are practiced in this legal sense by, it's a government program, so therefore you get to join the program, pay your dues, so to speak, to exercise the privilege of this imaginary thing called marriage in your mind. You might think it's real, but it's just being a corporate entity, a fictitious entity. So marriage, state marriage, is basically a fictitious entity and a fictitious arrangement. I doubt very seriously if anybody gives it too much thought, which is sad because they should, because they're being duped and they're being used and they're being manipulated and taken advantage of and robbed, and various other criminal activities are being waged against them. So they should be aware of the law, and the government cannot regulate marriage. It's a human right. The government is not allowed to make laws that infringe upon our right to marry or not marry, and what that marriage may be, or how that marriage may be defined by us, the people who are engaging in it. So and that's the thing about gay marriage, which is kind of silly. Same-sex marriage, well, it's not same-sex, it's same gender, because words mean what they mean. Common vernacular and slang aside. So you don't need a license to marry, because marriage is a right, and you have the right to determine and define that marriage as you wish it to be. So I'm assuming if you're a man and you want to marry a woman, or another man, if that's your thing, and you ask that person, you want to be married? Will you marry me, etc.? And that person says yes. Then okay, when should we start? Like, oh yeah, we should have some sort of little ceremony, some sort of little ritual thing, like maybe in a church or magistrate's office, justice of the peace. You can do that if that's what you want to do, but that doesn't change it at all. I am an ordained humanist clergyman. I can perform weddings, not marriages. That's between two people, or however many people are involved in that relationship. I can perform wedding ceremonies, and they are legal and they are valid. And in my case, recognized by the state, which is unfortunate. Didn't ask them to. Well, I did in a couple of cases where they said, this program, insurance program offered to you is dependent upon you being married legally. And I am married legally. I mean, it's not illegal to be married in the fashion to which I am married. So I had to provide some evidence of that. So I provided the marriage contract and the wedding certificate, which, as an ordained clergyman, I am allowed to perform the ceremony or officiate over the ceremony. And it is just a ceremony. It's just an event. hopefully a happy one, and a celebration of two people, or three, or however many are involved in your relationship, marriage relationship. I'm big on that, by the way. You know, you can have as many wives or as many husbands as you can get to agree to live in that arrangement. No law against it. Some people think polygamy is illegal, but it's not. That's another one of those farcical notions that have been implanted in people's brains, and they've bought it, totally bought into it. It is a lie, of course. However, you don't need a license to engage in a rite, and if you want to create a relationship arrangement between yourself and someone else, then you're right to do so. But why would anybody want to be a corporation? Why would you want to apply for a marriage license, which is simply a application to become a corporation in the marriage program that was invented by the government, an American government, by the way. Many other countries never heard of such a thing. I think in certain parts of the world, the religious facilities, like the Church of England or other countries over there, were involved heavily in marriage and would officiate over marriage and declare it to be valid in the eyes of God, so to speak. And but that's maybe it's still going on. People still believe that and follow that in some traditional cultural fashion, which is it's a beautiful ceremony, very romantic and all that nonsense. But legally speaking, that's just, you know, a bonus. It has nothing to do with being married. Legally speaking, in regards to the state program. So if you want to be married, don't get a license, don't become a fictitious entity in the eyes of the government, don't be a corporate entity engaging in a privilege. Exercise your right to marry or not as you see fit. You have the right to contract, and you can make a contract with a woman. If you're a guy, let's be married. Okay, here we got this contract, and it can be written or verbal or even implied, for that matter. You can just simply say, you want to be married? Yeah. Okay. Shall we be married as of now? Yes. You agree? Yes. You can consent? Yes. Are you allowed to consent? Yes. How old are you? Doesn't matter. But I'm only 16. Yeah, well, if you understand the concept of, if we say, yes, we are going to be married as of now, we're going to move in together, and we're going to do what married people do. You know, like have sex and shit. You agree with that? Yep. You have the authority to give your consent? Yep. Government has nothing to say about that. That's another thing. These age of consent laws, and particularly in regards to the age of consent to knowledgeably and willfully and intentionally agree to be married, to get into a marriage relationship. The government creates these fabricated laws and fabricated notions, and then proceeds to implant that nonsense in people's head, which is pretty sad. Fortunately, they didn't succeed in doing that to me. I've never accepted that. So, although I did engage in state corporate marriage program activities twice, because I was young and stupid, no better now. And I would like very much for the rest of America to understand the concept. So I'm telling you now, spread the word. I'm not just jerking you around here. I'm telling you the truth and the law. The reality of it. You know, it's hard to eat chocolate candy and talk on the radio at the same time. Shame on me. Shouldn't be doing that. Well, I am, so deal with it. So let's sum up. Prostitution is a simple matter of I own my body, belongs to me, I can do what I want with it, and if I want to have sex with somebody, I'm allowed because I have a right to do so. It's just human nature. If I wish to do so on the condition that I'm going to be compensated for doing it with money, or in the case of being married, I want my husband to provide me with a home and a car and nice clothes and so forth. That's sort of an old-fashioned idea today, but within my lifetime, in my history, I have come to understand that condition. You marry someone, you marry a woman, they expect you to take care of them and pay the bills and stuff. Like I said, that's changing, probably for the better. But if you want to be a corporation, and join the club, but that's no bearing on the reality of your marriage arrangement. That's why there was a lot of hoopla here recently about this same-gender marriage thingy, and it's now legal and so on. It's always been legal. If you're a gay person and you want to marry another gay person, a man wants to marry a man, then just do it. Like, let's get married. Okay. Who's going to do the ceremony? We don't need a ceremony. Are we going to have some kind of agreement, arrangement with us? I mean, are we going to? What are the conditions and rules and stuff involved? And we'll just sit down and agree with it. We'll just say what the terms are and define our marriage as we damn well please, because that's what marriage is. You just do it that way. You don't accept the government's definition, and you certainly don't accept the government's regulations of your right. That the government can regulate the privilege because you joined the club, you joined the program, and if you want to be a member in good standing of the program, then you follow the rules of the program. But you don't have to join it. You have free will. I'm sorry, freedom. That's what it's called. All right. So if you're a lawyer and you've gone to college, you got an education, you got trained, you're qualified to be a doctor, whatever type of doctor you are, and you get little certificates as you passed, you qualified, you're now a lawyer. Well, I'm a lawyer now, let's say, and I don't want to get a license, and I don't want to be a part of that government program. I don't want to belong to the cartel, a monopolistic lawyer cartel, the elitist club. Well then, you're not a lawyer. Of course I am. I got a piece of paper that says so. And let's say that I'm, like right now, let's just say, just hypothetical, just think of it this way. Here I am, I'm sitting here, I'm talking, and you're listening. And I'm saying, I'm a lawyer. And you say, you got a license? I said, nope, don't need one. And you say, well, you're not a lawyer then. I said, well, yeah, according to my credentials, yes, I am. And I wouldn't dispute that if I were you, because you will lose, since I know what I am. And so I'm a lawyer, and you come to me and you have a question. And I go, what do I do? What do I do? And I give you some legal advice. And you take it or not. It's up to you. But let's suppose I give you some bad advice. And believe me, you don't need to be a member of the American Bar Association to give bad advice to clients. It happens all the time. And you don't have to be a member of the American Bar Association or the American Medical Association. And trust me on this. I know doctors who are practicing doctors in facilities like medical facilities, hospitals, and clinics and so on, that do not belong to the elitist club of the American Medical Association. I know this for a fact. They exist, and they're practicing medicine. And they are not a member of the American Bar Association, or the American Medical Association, AMA. They chose not to belong to the cartel. And I might add that these one particular doctor I know of practices medicine in a state-run facility, and he's not licensed by the state. He doesn't belong to the organization, the cartel of doctors. Whether he has any kind of official licensing situation in regards to his association with the government and that clinic run by the government, I don't know. But I know he was not a member of the American Medical Association. I know lawyers that are not members of the elitist, monopolistic club of lawyers, the American Bar, because that's an association, that's not a government department. In fact, if you want to become a member of the American Bar Association, that's like, an association. Look up the word association. It doesn't say government department. It's not the American Bar Legal Department of the United States government. It's an association. So you don't need a license to be a lawyer. You don't really need a license. For example, how many times have you heard, like maybe on television, like that's real, some guy says, I'm going to represent myself, and the judge says, you sure? And oh yeah, I'm qualified to represent myself because I've been to law school and I know the law. Well, I know the law a little bit too, and I've never been to law school and don't have intentions of going to law school, and I can say under certain circumstances, under certain situations, that I can claim to be a lawyer, or certainly knowledgeable, and certainly more knowledgeable than some lawyers in certain areas. Fairly familiar with the constitutional law. I'm rather familiar with laws regarding human rights, privileges, corporations. Fairly familiar with those situations, and I'm certainly familiar with the principles of freedom. All right, that'll give you something to think about, and we'll talk about that some more later. For now, I'm going to let you go and get on with life. I'll talk to you next time. This is D. McClung. Have a good day.